It's been 3 months and it's been wild. I've 26 male, been in an on-again, off-again relationship with my now ex-girlfriend, 25 female, for the preceding 4 years, but we never stopped seeing one other or talking about each other. Despite this, the human connection is more essential to me than the formal title tie in this case. In a good location, living together and getting things done, we were in a good place. Since the pandemic was so severe, I ended up spending a lot of time inside. My mother was understanding of this, so she would often stop to pick up food for me on her way home from work and other errands. The decision was made to put her on antidepressants in February after she had been seeing a therapist for a few months. After just a few months of living together, I started to observe some odd behavior on his part. I saw that she seemed to be a lot more active and willing to attempt new and fascinating activities. At first, I didn't give it much thought since she had a lot of authority. She told me that she would be going on a date on a certain day in April. In response to my inquiry as to why she was calling it a date, she said that she was merely going to do something fun outdoors with someone. That seemed strange, and I eventually realized that something wasn't quite right. We sat down to talk, and she expressed her want to do more fun things with me, or at the very least to spend more time with me throughout our conversation. When I consented, my boyfriend and I set up a cozy setup and spent the evening speaking and snuggling while watching a movie and generally having a wonderfully lovely time. She informed him that she would meet him the next day and that she would see him again. When she asked me whether I trusted her, I informed her that I did not want her to have any intimate physical contact with him, but I wasn't going to stand in the way of her having a good time and meeting new people. She agreed, and that night, we made a pinky promise to each other. The next day, she went to visit him in person. As of dinner time, I hadn't heard back from her, so I contacted her to check if she was planning on coming home for supper. There was no answer to my question. I took a deep breath and continued. It had only been a few hours. My messages to her had gone unanswered for many hours, and it was becoming late. When I inquired as to whether one of our friends could reach her, she ultimately answered. I was giving her considerable stress and worry. She wanted to unwind, so she decided to spend the night in the hotel. I reminded her of the terms of our contract. "Did I make any promises to you?" she inquired. I was outraged at the time. I was taken advantage of. She had me restricted from the house for the night. When she finally texted me, it was at 1 p.m. the next day. She said that she intended to be completely honest with me. She had had contact with him at one point. She said that she did not want to get involved in any debates over it when she returned home. She said that she had no remorse about what she had done. I was taken aback. I was deafeningly silent when she got home, at 10 o'clock at night. She walked inside the room. I was expecting for a positive outcome to take place, but I had no clue what was going to happen beyond that point. She stepped into the room and immediately started to. But it wasn't because she was contrite or regretted what she had done. He didn't accept her. In fact, he turned her down. It turns out that the man hadn't really moved on from his ex. According to her, my messages made her feel uncomfortable, and she ended up having a panic attack that night. I'm sure he took advantage of the situation. I was completely at a loss for what to do. My thoughts were absolutely disorganized. For the last 4 years, she has been systematically destroying our faith in her, and in reaction, she has shattered her own heart, and I'm sure she was hoping I'd feel sorry for her when I didn't. I was enraged on the inside, as you might imagine, but I couldn't help but feel terrible for her. She was behaving in a hasty and careless manner. My mind couldn't comprehend that I was supposed to be soothing her, and after a period of silence and considerable consideration, I decided to crawl next to her in bed rather than sleeping on the couch. Everyone has the right to a second chance at success. This had never happened before, and I was well aware that she was going through a tough and confusing time at the time. This woman meant a great deal to me. The following day, she did her utmost to make up by preparing everything I asked for and baking an incredible cheesecake, and we had some wonderful discussions about other topics in between. I thought that we would be able to continue our conversation and get to know one another better. However, what really happened was that we progressively drifted apart. It seemed like she was constantly working, and on weekends, she was either working on her side job or hanging out with her friends. Again, I didn't give it much thought at first, until I started to notice it more and more. She was seldom at home anymore, and when she did come home, we would get into fights practically soon after she arrived. That late at night, I was continually high, and she was always on the verge of losing her mind. She ultimately admitted to me that she was head over heels in love with 3 different people. She proceeded to tell me on stories that I couldn't believe. That she was able to connect telepathically with her friends was a surprise. She has the ability to detect energy. She was able to interact with her dead grandfather, who was watching over her, as well as a few of angels who were there. She claimed to have evidence of these claims and wanted to share it with me on her own initiative. Her ideas lacked substance, and her demonstrations failed to produce the results she desired. She started criticizing me, and I was simply too pessimistic to see what she was getting at. I wasn't prepared for what was about to happen. She wasn't a traveling circus performer who could put on a performance whenever she felt like it. I tried all I could to reason with her, but every time I told her that what she said was upsetting me or that I was afraid, we only ended up arguing more. It was I, not her, who was having difficulties. I grew worried about her behavior and looked up her antidepressant medication. It has been discovered that it has the potential to increase manic tendencies, which in extreme cases might result in hospitalization and/or psychosis. She delivered a bombshell over a dinner conversation one evening. She made use of a dating application. She came upon a group of males. It was her demand that I leave her house that I was unable to comply. Alternatively, she might pack her possessions and move into an unknown friend's home the next day until she was able to relocate. I informed her that I wanted to stay and talk with someone who was actively involved in her treatment and medications. To my fortunate surprise, she agreed and indicated that if I were to send him a letter, she would personally deliver it to him. In the letter, I expressed my reservations about the situation. The next day, she reportedly packed her stuff and traveled to her doctor's office, where she allegedly gave the letter over. Because they evidently didn't feel it was relevant at this stage in the treatment, they didn't even bother to read it, according to reports. Something was seriously wrong, and I was well aware of it. It wasn't her at all. She kept me from going anywhere until a few weeks later, when a friend called to inform me that my ex had been admitted to the hospital for a psychotic episode against my wishes. Given that I knew she was afraid, I anticipated her to seek solace from me, but she seemed to have found a new lover instead. She made it obvious that she didn't want me involved in anything since I was stalking and defaming her at the time. When it came down to it, I was trying to contact a few of her closest friends, as well as her father, to voice my worries. 3 months later, here we are. She was liberated and is now in a committed relationship with this man. She still believes I'm obsessed with her and stalking her since I'm trying so hard to reach out to her. I'm completely screwed. I've been doing my own thing and trying to get back on track, but the sadness hasn't left me. She has no recollection of what occurred, only the bad things. Her reconstruction has taken place without my present, but with the assistance of a stranger from a dating app. I'm feeling helpless. I wished I could be there for her. I can't believe this is what she actually wants. I want to track her down and tell her what happened. But this just adds to her mistrust of me. But at its foundation, our trust is completely shattered. We can only rebuild it if she wants to do it herself, and even then, my faith in her is shaky. I'm not sure what will happen next. I feel compelled to forgive her. She doesn't really care about me anymore. She'd be okay if I never contacted her again. Maybe she'll alter her mind when she remembers what occurred, if that's even possible. Or maybe she's already given it a home and gone on. She had a lot to deal with. I'm afraid we'll slip even more apart. I don't want her to have a terrible impression of me for the rest of her life. She seemed to be resembling her former self more and more, but she isn't very interested in me. She also has a new boyfriend. I realize this is more of a mental health issue, but a lot of this stems from adultery.